I have to begin by apologizing this morning. Despite the fact that I am always hot, it's not lost on me that it's chilly in here this morning. And that's because I fall into the same trap every year when the weather starts to get warmer. And I say, oh, I'm so tired of paying that gas bill. Let's just cut it off. And this week was so beautiful, I jumped the gun and now we're paying for it this morning. And I apologize for that. I'm known for being cheap. I say that I watch our money like a hawk, but I'm like a little bird. I'm cheap, 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 cheap. So this is, it's a little penance for us this morning, and it's good. It keeps us awake on a kind of a dreary morning. And in my prior assignment in Portland, there was a woman who came from Poland who grew up in very difficult circumstances. And she would say, Father, don't worry about it. If the holy waters are not frozen over, you're doing okay. So we'll leave it at that. I want to talk about sheep this morning. And the reason for this is because it's the fourth Sunday of Easter. And the fourth Sunday of Easter is always Good Shepherd Sunday. And the liturgy of today uses the words sheep and shepherd and flock a grand total of 27 times, which means obviously there's an image that we're trying to be presented with this morning, and I think that we need to look at that. Now, I have to admit that when we consider the image of Jesus the Good Shepherd, I find it very comforting for me. Right? We look up at there, he's got a little lamb in his arms and all of these nice little sheep gathered around him. It's very comforting, and to put ourselves in that position and to imagine the Lord caring for us is great. But really, when you start to think about it, the idea of being a sheep is a much harder pill to swallow. And why do I say that? Because sheep have a reputation for being dumb. And while I may be many things, I don't like to think that I'm dumb, and I don't like to think that you are either. But like most images in Scripture that rub our modern sensibilities wrong, I don't think that this image of sheep is what our liturgy is trying to convey to us today. There's more to sheep than just their bad reputation. And I want to talk about that today. In fact, I want to begin by redeeming the reputation of sheep. Now, we have at least one veterinarian here this morning, so if I misspeak, he can correct that for me. But I did a little bit of research, and contrary to popular opinion, sheep are not as dumb as we like to think that they are. In fact, compared to other animals, they're rather intelligent. They're capable of some pretty high-level problem solving. And they have IQs that are similar to that of cattle and just below that of pigs, which we know are very clever. They can remember at least 50 different individual sheep and human beings. And sometimes they're doing better than I'm doing when it comes to that department. They are emotional creatures, and they are able to communicate their emotions by their facial expressions, but also by their ears. And they communicate with each other through a variety of different vocalizations. They even are known to self-medicate by going to certain plants that have medicinal properties when they're feeling ill. And female sheep, the ewes, they are extremely caring to their lambs, and they form deep bonds with them. So really, sheep are actually wonderful, smart, and emotionally intelligent animals. So where does their bad reputation come from? The reputation of being dumb? Well, I have to admit, in my own experience of sheep, the ones who act the silliest or the ones who seem to be the dumbest are the ones who have wandered off on their own. When you have a lone sheep or a sheep that's gone astray, that's when it seems like all of this intelligence that they have goes out the window, and they end up becoming a liability more than anything else. And I think that that's because at their base, sheep are at their best when they're doing what they're hardwired for. And that is, they're herd animals. They're meant to be with each other. They are hardwired for community. They're made to stick with each other no matter what. And that is where they find their safety, and that's where they're able to flourish. Now, sometimes being a flock of sheep can get you into trouble. Because if there's no one to lead you, or if you're being led by a poor shepherd, then you're going to be in danger. A whole flock of sheep that is not protected and not guided could easily be led to the edge of a cliff or could easily be susceptible to predators. And so the role of a shepherd in keeping a flock of sheep together and safe is absolutely important. And for this reason, free-thinking sheep are rare. You go off on your own as a sheep, you're probably not going to make it very long at all. So when you and I refer, in a derogative manner to people who are sheep, we usually mean that we're talking about people who are just going along with the crowd, the sheeple, right? And we take offense at that because we are fiercely independent people. We think on our own. We don't need everybody else. I got my own thing going on. You guys do your thing. I'm not going along with it. And while there's a certain freedom that comes with being an independent human thinker, I think the point of our gospel, and I think the point of this Good Shepherd Sunday, is to remind us that we are not made to be as independent as we think that we are. Like sheep, we're made for community. We're social animals. We're hardwired for each other. A human being on its own is not going to last long in this world at all. And somehow we have to find the happy medium then between being people who can think and reason and will not necessarily just go along with the crowd off the edge of a cliff, to also seeing that we're not lone sheep or lone wolves, and that we need to exist within a community if we are going to flourish. My friends, that's the point of the church. The church is the community, the flock, where you and I can gather together, not as a bunch of just individuals, but as a community where we can do what we have been supernaturally hardwired to do, and that is to move together. Now, this is sometimes dangerous business because we can be led astray. And if you turn on the news or you watch the internet, you're going to find that many religious leaders have taken great advantage of the community that we call the church. The Lord shares his shepherd office with fallible human beings. And sometimes our propensity, because we love to follow people, right? Even when we think we don't, we love it. Our opinions, our emotions, they're all shaped by what other people are saying and doing. We love celebrities, we love politicians, and we love religious leaders too. We love people who lead us. But when that is taken advantage of, that's when our tendency to go, enough of this, I'm out. I'm going to go do my own thing, comes in. But Jesus is speaking to us today and reminding us of the need to stay with the flock. And if we are going to be safe in doing this, we need to entrust ourselves to the Good Shepherd. And he proposes himself to be that shepherd. When we look at our liturgy today, when we look at the gospel, the psalm, the prayers of the Mass, we have this whole notion of this Good Shepherd with us, his flock. And what we find here is that contrary to a lot of the different kinds of communities that we find elsewhere in our human existence, this relationship is not about power and control. This relationship is about the abundant life. And that's what Jesus says at the end of our gospel today. He's talking to the Pharisees. He's also talking to the crowds, but he's trying to send a message to the Pharisees, who themselves are acting like bad shepherds. And Jesus is making it clear that he has not called a people to himself in order to get slaves or in order to have people who are just here to do his bidding. He has called to himself friends, and he wants them to have life and to have it more abundantly. But in order to experience this, you and I, we have to follow after him. So what then does our relationship with the Good Shepherd look like? Well, I think it begins with trust. And if you've been human for more than 3 minutes, you probably have some hang-ups with trust in this life. Because many people have let us down. And that inner rogue sheep is always looking for a reason to leave the sheepfold, because it doesn't feel safe when you're there. But Jesus is proposing to us today to take the risk and to trust him. And that means we need a good dose of humility. Humility is not self-abasing. Humility is getting close to the ground. Humus in Greek means earth, ground. And by humbling ourselves, and by seeing ourselves not as dumb sheep, but as beautiful, intelligent, wonderful creatures, being humble helps us to realize that, like sheep, we can't see everything. We can't possibly know everything. And our very existence is itself a risk. And if we are going to be well and survive, we are going to need to trust at some point in our lives. And we get better at trusting when the person we trust is the Good Shepherd. This means trusting that he sees what we don't. That while you and I are low to the ground like sheep who can really only see no farther than beyond our own snouts, he stands tall and he sees all. And in this relationship with his, which again is not like a slave to a master, but a child to a father, to a student, to a teacher, a sheep to a shepherd, we find in him and in his care the freedom to be the sheep that we are. And he doesn't just ask us to take his word for it. He puts his money where his mouth is. The Good Shepherd threw himself down for our sake. That old wolf that we call sin and death, Jesus threw himself down in front of in order to protect us, in order that we might have life. He's earned our trust. And you and I now, we take the risky step of actually placing our trust in him and giving up and letting go of our need for control. One of the most important things in this life is learning that lesson, to give up control. When we do, we find freedom. Good Shepherd wants us to place our lives and our hands in his and to trust. And this has great implications then for how you and I live out our existence as sheep with each other. Because if we are giving up control with him, we also have to give up control with each other. And this is where we find the greatest source of our human suffering, when you and I try to become lords of each other. When I try to exercise dominion over you, or I'm terrified that you're trying to exercise dominion over me. And this is hard, because we are constantly on the look for that threat to ourselves. But if we've entrusted ourselves to the Good Shepherd, we're going to be okay. And that means that we can give each other the freedom to be the messy sheep that we are. Yes, as a church, as a human family, we grate on each other and we drive each other nuts and we do harmful things to each other. But, and this is where we need to be clear, if the human race is meant to have a shepherd, we cannot take on that role ourselves. And if we do, it is only vicarious, which means it is not proper to ourselves. We are only stewards of it. In a sense, I'm the shepherd of this community, but I don't have that right or that office by any means of my own. I only exercise it in a vicarious way. And if at any point you find me or any other priest who is usurping this or making this about power and control, you know then that this is not coming from the Good Shepherd. It's coming from my brokenness, from their brokenness. And we call each other back to the abundant life, not by running away and not by trying to then control each other, but by love. Love is what sets the Good Shepherd and his flock apart from any other. Love is the bridge that heals brokenness, and love is the bridge that allows truth to then walk and to permeate our lives. And my friends, that has to be what we live by. That's how we have to walk with each other. That's how we have to walk with those who are not yet part of this flock and whom we desperately want to be part of this flock. Not so that we can control them, not so that we can have power over them, not so that we have more people to put money in the collection basket, but so that they might have life and might have it more abundantly. And the only way that human beings have ever had abundant life is through love. That's what the Good Shepherd offers to us. That's what he shows us, that's what he gives us, and that's what he calls us into. So my friends, like it or not, we're herd animals. We can't do this life on our own. And we can't hide from the fact that we are wired to be with each other. And no amount of willpower is going to change that reality. Our freedom and our happiness is found in the beautiful submission to the boundaries that come with being as part of the Lord's flock, to the care of the Good Shepherd. And while we may experience this at times as being frustrating, when we realize the great opportunity for love that comes from being as part of this flock, we end up finding the great source of the happiness that we long for. Let us live in this truth, and daily, and in so many little ways, relinquish control and give up ourselves to the care of the Good Shepherd.